Hey, everybody, welcome back to the next episode of How to Get Away with Staffing. My name is Colin LeBeau, president here at Foxhire, and I've got Steve Gipson, the director of sales and operations at Recruiters Websites. What's up, Steve?
Hey, Colin, how are you?
Not bad.
I,
How are
I
you
gotta
doing?
be good, man. I gotta be honest here. I don't know if I looked at the name of the podcast of How to Get Away with Staffing, but I like it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that's cool. It's like we got away with that one. So
Yeah. Well, it speaks to the compliance components that we care about, right? Like,
right,
how can I do this and do it compliantly so that I can keep this money that I'm making, right? That was sort of the
right.
whole impetus of that. But but yeah, we're I don't know 25 episodes in, and I think people like the name, so we'll keep it.
Yeah, no, I dig it. Yeah, it's good.
Thanks, man. From a marketing person, I appreciate that. So listen, I think my favorite question to ask always in these situations is because most times you ask somebody how they got in the staffing industry, they're not like, as a kid, I dreamed of being in the staffing industry, right? No one
Yeah.
ever says that. So would love to hear your story. Like, how did you get into the staffing world?
Well, so when I was a kid, Colin, I dreamed of being in the staffing industry. It's not maybe not a dream, but if I could do my best Bane impression, right? I was born into it. I was molded by it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would be a what you would call a recruiting brat. So I've just been around it my entire life.
Nice.
So dad was a recruiter. Worked for actually got to start with like a lot of firms within the MRI organization.
Yeah, cool.
So started there with one of their offices. He was just one of the recruiters at an office there in St. Louis. Moved to a mid-sized staffing company that then he helped expand throughout the Midwest, and then branched off and started his own firm. And so I was the kid that was when you take your kid to work day, I was at the recruiting office
Nice.
when he was in St. Louis working, and then when he was working from home, I was listening to him to take calls, and he would watch Steve Finkel tapes in the evenings. And so we would sit down and you would hang out with dad, right? And so you would just sit there and you would watch these Steve Finkel tapes with him or these Pete Lefkowitz tapes. And so
Nice.
like literally I've been watching these things my entire existence and my entire life. And so when I graduated college, I didn't want to work for dad right away. Um, you gotta, uh,
Earn your stripes.
push back against the old man. And
Yeah.
maybe it
Rebel.
wasn't right. Rebel by going to work for another staffing company.
Oh, of
And
course. Yeah.
so I did that right out of college with a healthcare staffing company in St. Louis. Spent about 2 years there, and then moved back home. My wife was still in college, actually in our hometown. My girlfriend at the time proposed to her, and so wanted to stay around that area, and then started working for dad. And then I spent 7 years specializing within the property and casualty insurance industry with dad's firm. And so he brought myself, my brother, my sister. And so we had a whole boutique firm, and dad and my sister actually still do that every single day. So
Nice.
just it was something that was kind of always for me a little bit of the
Family.
obvious. Yeah, 100%.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, there are a lot of family businesses in the staffing industry, which I do appreciate. I think that's awesome. So for those of you that were in there, maybe you guys did have some dreams associated with the staffing space, but that's cool.
It's probably
So
yeah.
so you're not doing any recruiting now, though. You're all focused on recruiters' websites, yeah?
Yeah. So the way we got out of that, so we were working the desk. My brother, our CEO now at Recruiters Websites, his name is Jeff Gipson. He may beat me up for saying this, but whatever. He can still beat up his little brother, I guess. He was kind of the kind of recruiter that would do anything but pick up the phone. Right? Anything but recruiting. He would find himself doing whatever he could as long as he didn't have to make that call to a candidate or make that call to a prospective client. And so what that did, he had a technical background, technical mindset, self-taught developer, all those things. He took it upon himself and he built our firm's website at the time. And so as he did that, he'd also started doing a lot of email marketing, those kind of things, started taking those initiatives. And we started seeing really good results from that. And then also other members of different associations we were part of within the industry saw our website, saw some things that he was doing. And they said, well, who did it? And we said, well, Jeff did it. And he said, well, let me talk to Jeff. And we're like, okay, sure. So we sent them to Jeff. He started moonlighting, doing those things on his own time. And it got to the point after a little while, he's actually turning away business. He had, you probably can relate to this, I think. He had, at the time, 3 small kids under the age of
Nice.
4.
Yeah. Yep.
And then he has 5 total now. But at the time when you have small kids, you're trying to recruit during the day, do your day job, and then also do these things at night. It became a lot. And so he took a step back and he said, okay, I think there's probably an opportunity for me to do this full time. And so he branched off, started recruiters websites. A few years, maybe about a year and a half later, he recruited me out of the recruiting business and said, hey, I need help with this. Would you be interested in doing this? And
Nice.
so I said, sure, why not? And so he opened the doors in 2012. I came in again about a year and a half later. And so since then, we haven't really looked back. It's been about what was it, 11 years now? Roughly a little over 800 clients that we've partnered with in a lot of different capacities and ways, and have been doing that ever since. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think I met your brother for the first time at an MRI conference, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, you would have. Yeah, he was there.
Yeah. So it sounds like it grew a lot of that. I assume when you say we sent him over to Jeff, those were mostly MRI offices that were probably calling in and saying, hey, who did that?
Yeah, kind of. I'm smiling at this because it was also top echelon offices.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
right. And so we do a lot of
TE's
partnerships with them now. Yeah, and so
we were formerly TE, obviously. So
right. And so yeah, they just the relationship we have with a lot of different offices and things that had come to us at that time were a lot of them from that network, MRI network, and just different places. Yeah.
got it. Cool, man. So you've been doing it a while. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are you seeing now? Like, obviously you started this, quite a few years ago. What are the biggest challenges that recruiting and staffing agencies are having right now that you guys might be helping with?
So, it's interesting, right? Because the world that we live in today is so much different than the world 3 years ago, which, typically things don't change quite as fast.
That fast,
right?
yeah.
I guess about 4 years ago now, I guess the whole, and we live pre-COVID, post-COVID, but I'm gonna be super cliche. Everything changed.
Everything is different.
Everything's different. It's never the same. And it's in a lot of ways, recruiting fundamentals and just what recruiters do every single day, and staffing firms and recruiting, the difference between direct hire and contract work and some of the nuances there. I primarily will probably speak from the recruiting side, just because that's where I find myself. That's my background. But the fundamentals of what they do of building those relationships, getting those clients, the candidates that they need, the talent that they need to be able to expand their organization, or helping those candidates be able to find the right opportunity to further their career. Those things are all still there. All the details and things that are in that process, you have to be great at those elements, and that hasn't changed. But the mediums and how we really communicate with them, I think I guess have changed pretty substantially. Right. Social media and the prevalence of that now. I mean, obviously it was a thing 4 years ago, but it's the social selling skills and being able to interact on those platforms and engage those prospective clients and candidates there and demonstrate that expertise. The new technologies from, I don't even want to say it, but I know I have to, with AI and all the things that so now we met our quota, so now we're good with that. But with AI and all the new tools and resources that are available for recruiters to create content and information and engage with those clients and candidates, having the ability to be able to harness that, I think, is where I see a lot of recruiting firms kind of struggling. Because there's so much difference in the way that someone can utilize those tools to be effective, but there's so much noise and so much out there to use. Where do you begin? I was talking to, you guys know Brad Biley pretty well. And him and I do that little podcast together right now. And we were talking, I think it was yesterday when we recorded that episode. But we have recruiters that are trying to get the most out of AI, right? Where you have this, where they're trying to harness all these opportunities that exist in creating that information, and getting to become almost AI experts and prompting experts and engineers in the way that they want you to be able to use this the systems that are all out there. And there's so many of them now that popped up.
There's a
So
lot
many
more than there
varieties.
were two years ago. Yeah.
Right, 100%. And so this stuff is going out to an audience, and I say this with all love to our audience, because again, I am a recruiter, so I get it. That's why
You
I
can say
always put
this.
in that position, right? So I'm going to preface this, but we don't even know how to use our ATSs all the way, right?
Yep.
I mean, we scratch the surface of what it is that our ATS needs to do. We scratch the surface of what LinkedIn can do. We scratch the surface of any tool that we use. So many firms I talk to still haven't updated their website since 2014. And now
Oh,
they're all wanting to be prompt engineers and be AI experts.
right, right.
So, obviously there's a level of that in getting as much out of it as you can, but I feel like that we're being over inundated with some of these tools and technologies that are out there, and by getting so much thrown at us at once, it's almost a paralysis by analysis in some ways. And
Yes.
we don't know necessarily how to be able then to approach our marketing efforts as a whole, as an industry, with all of these tools there. And so we're only just doing just kind of the bare minimum and the basics when it comes into marketing.
Yes.
And so I think that's one of the biggest things that firms that one of the biggest changes, and some of the things that have made a major impact is, yes, more tools are available. Yes, content creation is more accessible, but getting to use those tools, finding the time to do it and learn them, being consistent in the way that they're able to market to those prospective clients and candidates. Those are a lot of things where we're seeing major changes in the way that the industry has been able to interact with their marketing efforts.
Yeah. I mean, it takes me back to the thing you said earlier, which is like your brother didn't want to pick up the phone, right? I think a lot of times it's like you either get totally overwhelmed and try to do all these different things, or your brain can't comprehend all these different tools. You turn that off and you say, I'm just going to pick up the phone and call, like I have been forever.
Right. Well, and even in some ways, though, too, you get caught up in using these tools. Because I know this happens to me all the time. And it's not necessarily like, so if I'm working a desk, picking up the phone, sending an email, having those conversations, that would be kind of a sales activity. And we
Mhm.
can replace what is actually valuable sales activity with kind of nonsense sometimes, and just activity, because we feel like we're accomplishing something, even though we've just kind of been playing with that tool.
Yep.
People don't necessarily approach, and I'm going to speak in all kinds of generalizations, so I'm going to offend people, I'm sure. But people don't necessarily, and the industry doesn't necessarily as a whole approach marketing from a strategic perspective. They approach it as a function. So
Tactical.
right, I'm going to post on social media now. And okay, so why are you going to post on social media? How is that going to relate to your brand and your persona online? And then how is that going to support your sales and your end goals of growing your organization? And do you even know what those things are? And so rather than kind of itemize and kind of think about a strategy and that goes along with why I'm posting online on LinkedIn, they just start posting.
Yeah.
And that becomes then kind of again, it becomes an activity then that is not as fruitful as it could be. And then it also usually ends in inconsistency and tapering off, because there's no strategy behind it. You don't know what you're measuring and
You
why
have
you're
no idea if
doing
it's
what you're doing.
working. Yeah.
Right. Right. And
Yep.
so we see that all the time. And I think that is another major thing that people in the industry just don't necessarily think about in the right ways.
Yeah.
So and then obviously there's all the other things that people run into, like there's more noise. There's more firms now, I feel like, and people are more active. So how do you cut through all
Agree.
that noise?
Agree. Yep. Yeah,
You
no,
have to
like the
balance.
regional aspect was also a thing too with staffing, right? Like regional staffing firms, you supported your area, right? And now
Right.
almost every firm can be, in every state. They can market
Right.
to anybody, they can support clients anywhere. So that regional aspect goes away. So you're competing with the whole country now rather than competing with just
Right.
your market. But I think, what resonates with me is like you're playing with those tools, right?
Right.
One of the things our CEO says when he's talking to the leaders here is like, you guys, we don't want to be playing business. We need to be doing business, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
the difference between playing business and doing business, and some of the things you feel like are contributing to the bottom line are playing business. You're not actually doing business, and you don't want to ever trick yourself into that. And so I think a lot of these tools can make you feel like you're doing something that's productive, but ultimately it's just like a waste of time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and again, they can be effective just if we want to be able to use those tools to execute on a strategy that we put together to be able to reach more clients, more candidates, whatever it is that we're looking to do within our organization as a recruiting or staffing firm, that's wonderful. But if we're just throwing things in there and not using them for any specific purpose,
Yeah,
just as we get kind of that wild hair and want to get aggressive with that, and then we lose that focus. I think they can actually be a little bit of a deterrent in some ways because you're
for sure. Distraction.
always chasing that, right?
Yeah.
Right, and especially too, you see now you get the whole, what is it that what I'm looking for? It's not really a FOMO, but you know, get a little bit of an envy because you'll see somebody post on LinkedIn about this really cool GPT that they put together and how they're using it, and then you're like, oh,
I should do that.
yeah, I should do that, right? And we don't see. I think I've heard this before. We don't see the input, right? All we see is the output.
Yeah.
So
What did it produce? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
we have no clue. But we could get very easily chase some of those highs that are around the different technology that people are using.
Yeah.
So,
It can make you feel good, but it may not get you placements, right? Or even if it is, how can you measure it? How do you know, right, if it's working or not? Yeah,
yeah,
totally. I think you're right. You know, the last 3 years has really changed the entire market from a marketing perspective and a sales perspective. And knowing where to spend your time can be very difficult now because you think things could be producing ROI, maybe they're not, can't measure it, all that type of stuff.
sure, yeah. And for us, one of the biggest things that we try to do when we talk to our clients and even just people in the industry is how can you just stay top of mind, right? Especially in the direct hire world, it's so much about timing. And you may call a client today and they have no openings, but then a week from now, their CFO quits and they need that filled today. And if they don't remember you from that conversation you had a week ago, or from an email that maybe they got from you the day before, then the likelihood of them calling you is probably pretty slim for that need.
Pretty low. Yeah.
Pretty low. And so if we can just find ways and use the mediums that are available to us to build consistency and get in front of those prospective clients, if we're talking about from a biz dev perspective, and have those consistent touch points, which now they say is, it used to be like 7 to 10, right? Now they say it's like 20.
21 or 2, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And so if we can just build those into a process or into a campaign, and be able to stay in front of all those different potential, whether existing clients, past clients, or prospective clients, on a regular frequency, that when that timing makes sense,
and the timing hits,
then they can reach out to us and have that conversation.
Yep.
I think candidate experience is a little bit different. I think that's changed a whole lot. The expectations of candidates post-COVID as well, which is hard to manage.
Yeah, there's a whole remote versus on-site problem, but it is a employer's market right now. So maybe that's subsided a little bit, but yeah, totally understand that.
Well, so, so a candidate reaches out to a firm, submits their background for a potential role. And you say you have 100 people that do that, only one of them is getting the job, right? And so you could have 99 disappointed people.
Right.
But the expectation is that candidate, they only see maybe the one job they applied to, or the one firm that they reached out to or had the conversation with. They don't see the other 99 or that then have also submitted themselves. So they expect us as recruiters as well to be able to have more of an engagement with them than just that kind of transaction. We obviously hear the term ghosting all the time. What I found out is that candidates don't necessarily mean ghosting in the sense of just in the interview process, but even just with the initial conversation or initial outreach. If a recruiter doesn't get back to them or a firm doesn't get back to them, that's considered ghosting. Whereas from a recruiter perspective, I only consider it ghosting is if we're in the recruiting process, you've interviewed a few
process,
times. Right. And so
where does that interview process start? Candidates might think it starts way earlier,
100%. And so the expectations of candidates to be more engaged with a brand or expecting a firm to be more engaged with the brand is far greater than it used to be. And so having processes like that is something that's going to be important for firms to think about too. When you talk about a marketing strategy, keeping those candidates engaged and staying in front of them in the right way so you don't leave a bad taste in their mouth. I
Yeah.
think that's something that's a major shift that recruiting firms need to figure out as we go forward too.
Right. Yeah, that's a major way to differentiate your firm, is definitely have really strong candidate relationships. I mean, and you said it earlier, there's a lot more firms now. You're competing against much more noise. So what are some of the things you're doing with recruiting firms and their websites to help them differentiate themselves in that ocean of competitors?
Yeah. So build credibility, right? So many times you'll see a website that doesn't talk to the extent of what the firm is able to do, and what they have done,
Yeah.
the expertises that they focus within. So many recruiting firms now are very much specialized in a specific niche.
Niche. Yeah.
Yeah, you talked about the geographical focus, which there's still some of that, a lot of that as well, but now if they do work national, they work specifically in this industry.
Very specific job. Yeah.
Right. And so what's cool about that is it gives you so many opportunities to be able to leverage your expertise, create content that allows you to stand out and give advice on what's taking place in that industry, to build credibility on your understanding of the industry, the types of firms that you've worked with, the years of experience you have within that specific discipline or niche. And being able to create that kind of content on a website really allows a recruiter to be able to stand out if they are using that website to send their prospective clients and candidates to.
Yep.
Other things we see, like SEO, optimizing that website. So many firms
Table stakes.
Right. They don't do it though. I mean,
Yeah.
Again, you could probably break down the 80-20 rule, but firms just don't see the need to do it. There's still that mindset of, well, recruiting and staffing is different than insert any industry.
Everything else.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though, as what do we do when we look for any product or service? Well, we go online, we do a search. You get referrals, you ask friends. Yeah, you do those things, but you also go and do research on those referrals. And so being in a position where you can have a website that comes up when someone's looking for accounting recruiters in Ohio or accounting recruiters in general, puts you in a position to at least be considered, have a conversation, right? You still got to make a placement. You still got to go find a candidate. You got to build the relationship. It doesn't change those things, but at least maybe you'll have a chance to have a conversation. And so we focus really heavily on building out organic content and building out the depth of that website to be able to be as visible as possible for our clients, to their clients and candidates.
Yeah. That authority piece. I mean, like, you want to be able to speak to that if it's a niche industry, right? Like, that industry, you can communicate that that industry. When they search you online, they're not like, oh, that website looks sketchy. Like, I don't know if I'm going to call this company, that all those thoughts that prevent people that might have been referrals or that might have found you from actually reaching out. You want to just solve for all those things for sure. And that can go a long way. That you don't even have to do anything with AI or anything crazy like that.
Well, the cool thing is that it all works together, right? So say you're wanting to focus on SEO and build some visibility in your website. Okay, so how do I do that? Let me create a piece of content that then allows me to be able to be specifically focused on this keyword and key phrase, which, if I'm working in a specific niche, probably relates to a little bit of expertise and some things I can demonstrate in that as well. Right. So I create a single piece of pillar content that then is able to reflect my expertise. It's able to help optimize my website from an SEO perspective. And then I take that piece of content and now I take it and I create, and you can use AI to create all these different pieces, but you take that information, that content, and you create a LinkedIn post, maybe 2 or 3 LinkedIn posts about different perspective and points regarding that piece of content that you've created. And then you also take that piece of content and you use it as a pillar piece in your email blast or your newsletter that you send out once a month to be able to drive those clients and candidates back to your website. So by taking the time to do one piece of substantial content on your website, all of a sudden you've satisfied SEO, you've satisfied LinkedIn, you have a piece for your email marketing, you're demonstrating and building credibility and expertise, and it's all done from taking a little time and effort to build that specific piece of content. And so if we sit back and think about some of the things that we want to accomplish in the strategy around that and put some plans in place of how we're going to use that information, you can get a lot out of one specific task that you do. And so just
one piece of content.
About how those things connect and what it is that means for your firm and building your brand, your visibility, your credibility. Those are all things that I think that firms can really take advantage of, especially with the tools that are available. So
I love that. And I think it goes along really well with how you guys have maybe integrated with Haley I don't know if people know, but you guys joined Haley Marketing. And so talk a little bit about that transition and how that's helped you maybe have that holistic approach with your customers.
Yeah, I mean, so a few years ago, I mean, they came begging just for us to be. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
David?
Yeah. Don't nobody at David Stearns with this.
Yeah.
No, so obviously Haley focuses very heavily on the staffing side of the business. We focus very heavily on the direct hire side of the business.
Yeah.
And so a couple of years ago, 2 years ago now, a little over 2 years, it just made sense for our two organizations to kind of come underneath that single umbrella. And so the opportunity presented itself, and so both parties moved that direction. And so now we are two separate entities, but underneath that corporate umbrella, and allows us as an organization collectively to be able to really serve the industry in a way that maybe wasn't possible before. And so we get a chance now to learn from their side of the business. They get a chance to learn from our side of the business. We get a chance to see what's worked for them for 27 or 28 years they've been doing this. And same thing from our perspective with the 12 years of specializing within the direct hire side. And it just has created a lot of opportunity for that iron sharpening iron and us to better serve the industry. And so it's been a really exciting kind of transition as we've been able to bring those things together.
Awesome, man. I love that. Well, you sounds like you guys are working on a lot of cool stuff. If anybody is looking for some website support, definitely give these guys a call. Always a great conversation, man. Love chatting about marketing in the recruiting and staffing space. If you found this valuable, please subscribe. If not, really appreciate you watching this one, and we'll see you next time on How to Get Away with Staffing. Thanks, guys.